The early to mid 1900s, the rise of nationalisms. Over the period of the early to mid 1900s, the UFS, similar to a number of institutions in South Africa and globally, was to undergo a journey in which the ideas of nationalism were fervently believed in, fought for, and achieved. However, as was witnessed both then and now, nationalisms often result in harmful outcomes, not only for those that are marginalized, but also for their protagonists. The lessons we are able to draw from the previous century remain relevant today, given the current nationalism developments at play in South Africa and globally this century. The history of the UFS from 1904 to 1994, as a result, provides an important lens for us to understand ourselves and the particular world we find ourselves in today. We will examine two phases of development. First, over the period of 1904 to 1950. The second is from 1951 to 1994. In the first phase, the fight to shape the university as an important site and space for the development of the Afrikaner is undertaken within the time and space of continental and global nationalisms. The second phase, the university consolidates itself as an Afrikaans university within the time and space of apartheid. We start at the beginning, 1904, the year in which the university first starts operating. In this year, 6 students are registered for the only course on offer at the time, a BA. 4 professors from Britain were imported as the first lecturers, and the subjects they taught included English, philosophy, mathematics, physics, chemistry, botany, zoology, and geology. Later, Prof. Adriaan Franken, a Dutch speaker and a promoter of the language movement, would be employed to teach history and modern languages, which were German and Dutch. In 1907, he was one of the founders of the society Onze Taal, Our Language, in Bloemfontein, and in 1909, one of the Free State representatives at the Language Conference in Bloemfontein, where the Suid-Afrikaanse Akademie voor Taal, Letterkunde en Kuns, South African Academy for Language, Literature and Arts, was founded. While not yet being able to position the development of Afrikaans as a language as a concern of the university given its more English character, the post-war and often conflicting ideals of conciliation and the Afrikaner ideals of nationalism were however starting to emerge through the type of student societies being established in campus. One of the first student support organizations to be established was that, in 1904, the Christian Student Society, also known as the Christelijke Studentenvereniging, or CSV. With a focus on conciliation, the CSV was a national organization with chapters across universities and which had objectives of promoting religion among students and encouraging students to read the Bible and to discuss issues around morals. Sunday classes were also offered to students. The poor were visited and missionary groups were established. Other societies which supported the Afrikaner nationalism ideals also developed, including the Debating Society, which was established in 1908, the Afrikaans Student Language Society, which was established in 1911, and the Dutch Afrikaans Book Circle, which was established in 1915. In 1905, the Bloemfontein municipality donated erf 1962 to the Orange River Colony for the development of educational facilities only. On this land, Grey College and the Grey University College were to be established. In 1906, the Orange River Colony would budget for an amount of £125,000 for the buildings of both Grey College and the university in the same year. The name of the university changes to that of Grey University College, abbreviated GUC. The GUC's first Senate also comes into being in 1906. In the same year, Grey College School moves to its new buildings. With the school and the university now administered separately, students of the GUC moved to other temporary buildings in town, situated in the area occupied by HTS Louis Botha School. On the 19th of December 1907, the foundation stones of the main building and the Abram Fisher men's residence are laid. Attending the foundation stone laying ceremony are Boer leaders including Generals Hertzog and De Wet. The architecture of both Grey College and the GUC are understood to have been designed to represent both South African and international styles. This too, in principle, was part of the conciliation agreements reached between the British and the Boers post the ending of the Second South African War in 1902, with both nations needing to be represented in design. In 1908, Grey College and the GUC are officially separated. In 1909, the main building and the Abram Fisher Hostel are completed. Male students would occupy the Abram Fisher Hostel, while female students would occupy Beaufort Lodge, located in town opposite the Presidency up until 1919, when they were able to occupy the newly built hostel on campus, named the President Steyn Hostel. In 1910, D.F. Malherbe, one of the protagonists of the development of the Afrikaans language and who was employed at the university, would pen the GUC's first college song in English. In later years, and with the university becoming an Afrikaans medium only, this would be translated and sung in Afrikaans instead. Just as with the initial anthem of the Free State, the song venerates the landscapes and the belonging to this promotes amongst citizens. On the 30th of April 1910, Act No. 5 of 1910 is promulgated, which declared the university as an independent institution of higher learning in the Orange River Colony, which could teach in the arts, sciences, and applied sciences. The promulgation also declares that the university will be responsible for its own funding. Hence, in 1911, the Bloemfontein municipality starts contributing £500 annually to the university, but even this is not enough, and the university would struggle immensely for years with finances. In 1911, the first female student is elected onto the SRC, and the first subject is taught in Dutch, and thus begins a turning point. In 1912, the Grey Universiteit College student newspaper is established. This later becomes known as the Irawa from 1944 onwards. In 1914, the need to expand the main building to accommodate more lecture rooms is undertaken through a loan from the Union government. This becomes known as the North Block. In the same year, the so-called National Afrikaner Rebellion of 1914 has an impact on the campus, dividing students into three groups. The first group is neutral, believing that they are at the university to study. The second group was pro-government, supporting General Botha and Smuts of the Union government. The third group is made up mostly of students identifying themselves as Afrikaners who support and who join the rebellion cause. Since the ending of the South African War in 1902, resentment against the British nation and English speakers in South Africa, and resentment against the supposed conditions of conciliation between the British and Afrikaner continued to grow among many of the Afrikaner communities. Initially, the Afrikaner republics thought that they would be able to regain their independence. However, the 1910 Union of South Africa placed the former Afrikaner republics under British rule and administration indefinitely. Central to the resistance against concepts of conciliation, which many of the Afrikaners felt was imposed and which challenged their need for self-development along the trajectories they desired, was the drive once more to develop Afrikaans as a language and as a culture, in essence, redevelop the Afrikaner nation. In 1913, following years of public lectures on the validity of Afrikaans as a language by thinkers including, for example, Dr. Brill, President Steyn, D.F. Malherbe, and other protagonists from the Cape Colony, a language festival was organized and held in Cape Town to promote the legitimacy and development of Afrikaans, driven by Afrikaans language protagonists. Further signs of rebellion were shown in 1914, when the National Party was established in Bloemfontein under General Hertzog, a Boer leader who had previously formed part of the Union government under General Louis Botha, but who had subsequently openly spoke out against the inequality between the English and Afrikaners, given that the post-war government seemingly focused more on the rights and the development of the English at the expense of the Afrikaner. By 1915, and with an increasing revival of nationalism and the desire for independence among the Afrikaners, the National Press, or Die Nasionale Pers, was established, with the aim of furthering the cause of the Afrikaans people through the media. In 1916, ex-president of the Free State M.T.S. Steyn dies in Bloemfontein and accorded a hero's funeral, not only for the role he played as president of the previous independent Free State Republic, but also for the role he played in the Second South African War and in the promotion of the Afrikaners' development needs. With his guidance, support, or lobbying, a number of institutions and organizations are established in the period after the war, aimed at supporting and developing the post-war devastated Afrikaner nation. These would include the GUC, the Oranje Macy School, the Women's War Memorial, and a number of subsidiary organizations like that of Help Mekaar. By 1918, the Afrikaner Boerebond, a secret organization, is also established to promote economic development and business development needs of the Afrikaner nation. In the same year, the GUC is placed under the University of South Africa, while UCT and Stellenbosch are recognized as independent teaching and residential universities by the Union government. Further, the GUC would no longer receive government funding and would have to source its own funds through, for example, student fees. 1918, however, also brought about the right for universities to use Afrikaans as a language of instruction following lobbying from the Afrikaanse Studentbond. Most subjects, however, continue to be taught in English at the GUC, given the need to first develop the Afrikaans language within the academic framework. D.F. Malherbe is subsequently appointed as the professor of Afrikaans not only at GUC but also at UNISA. And because of the language still being in need of development, the language debate at the GUC only comes to fruition academically at the university in the 1930s and 1940s. On the 1st of October 1920, J.D. Castell is appointed as the first rector of the GUC. Castell was born in 1854 in the Free State. He participated in the Second South African War with Generals Steyn and De Wet, and had played a significant role as a minute taker at the Vereniging Peace Treaty talks in 1902. Shortly after the ending of the war, he would accompany Generals De Wet, De la Rey, and Botha to Europe to plead for the independence case of the Afrikaner republics. As a deep Afrikaner nationalist, Castell was appointed in 1920 to build the university's student numbers. Up until then, not many Afrikaners had registered at the GUC, preferring instead to study at Stellenbosch given its use of Afrikaans. Castell firmly believed and promoted that the university should reflect its indigenous environment, in other words, that of the Afrikaner, through Afrikaans. From 1924 to 1926, he would assist many other language protagonists in the translation of the Bible into Afrikaans. From 1926, he would be appointed as the Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Africa. In 1923, under Castell's rectorship, the cornerstone of the Reitz Hall Centenary Complex is laid by F.W. Reitz, former president of the Free State Republic. This hall was to serve as a building for eating, socializing, and studying for the students, given the student numbers were steadily increasing under Castell's influence. Later that year, the first fair, or what is later to be called RAG, was also established with the aims of raising funds for the university to promote the GUC to the public locally in order to recruit more students from Bloemfontein and its surrounds. In June 1924, NAUS, meaning the National Union of South African Students, was established on the GUC campus by 20 representatives from 9 universities in South Africa. The GUC's involvement in NAUS, however, would not last long given the different ideals of the GUC was to have in terms of Afrikaner student rights. These ideals were soon to be embodied by D.F. Malherbe, who was to follow Castell as the next rector of the GUC from 1928 to 1934. Under Malherbe's voice and leadership, the language debate would come to the fore, given that the Afrikaner nationalism was also to rise nationally. The Bloemfontein Council was at the time controlled by Afrikaners, and the previous students of the GUC would start to play an increasingly important role as alumni in the driving of the Afrikaner nationalism project. Malherbe's promotion of Afrikaans went against the conceptualization of conciliation of the Union framework. While in 1925, English and Afrikaans were provided with equal status nationally, Malherbe's campaigning in the 1930s promoted the Afrikaans language at the expense of English to the extent that in 1937 he was suspended by the GUC Council and only reinstated following the public outcry from Afrikaans-speaking students. Malherbe's campaign also found support with the provincial Afrikaans newspaper, Die Volksblad. While the province's English newspaper, The Friend, supported bilingualism, the editor of Die Volksblad had a seat on the GUC Council with significant influence, and in the GUC Council report in 1929, the following is stated. The Council strives to earnestly educate students in a manner that is keeping with the religious outlook and traditions of the Free State population. Consequently, although students from all sectors are welcome, the interests of the vast majority will be accorded acknowledgement, commiserated with their cultural values. The period of Malherbe's rectorship would achieve the positioning of Afrikaans within the university as a language of academic study and development, and also as a language of identity and nationalism. The broader national struggles between the National Party and the South African Party, or SAP, and who were more moderate, would however see the GUC Council from 1929 having more SAP members. This, together with the economic depression which was to hit globally from 1929 onwards, would ensure that Malherbe's vision would not be fully implemented until the late 1940s, where the National Party was able to gain strength and political dominance. It was however during Malherbe's time that the GUC would celebrate its 25th anniversary with the unveiling of the Steyn statue on campus, in front of the main building, and which had been fundraised through the Afrikaner Studentbond over a period of 12 years. The Afrikaner Studentbond Committee identified Steyn as the inspiration for a statue in that he, was the former president of the Free State Republic and had worked diligently for an indigenous Free State university. Prior to the Second South African War, he had been the soul of the war and was recognized as the Afrikaner's Afrikaner. Even though Maharba's vision for an Afrikaans-only university were not yet realized, the contestation around language at other universities were however proceeding. In 1932, and with the rising Afrikaner nationalism, the previously bilingual University of Pretoria decided to become an Afrikaans sole medium institution. Students and interested party at the GUC subsequently also demanded that this take place at the GUC. In response, the GUC Council would announce that Afrikaans would be extended as a medium of instruction. However, GUC Senate members disagreed and the GUC Council would have to back down on these plans. In 1934, the name of the Afrikaans Studentenbond is changed to the Afrikaanse Nasionale Studentenbond at a congress in Potchefstroom. This national structure would now counter the more liberal and predominantly English-speaking NAUS. The Afrikaanse Nasionale Studentenbond was based on Protestant Christianity, a cultural and nationalistic foundation, and saw its mandate as shaping its members in accordance with an Afrikaans-based national character, which would promote Afrikaner culture and scholarship. It would further seek to raise the poor whites economically, and it would be the base from which Afrikaner national leaders would then emerge. In a short space of time, this body would become the largest society on the GUC campus. This body would further establish its own newspaper, a bureau for social work for the Afrikaner youths, various youth movements, debating societies, a desk for foreign affairs, which would enable Afrikaner students to tour Holland and Germany. Ordinary activities would include evenings of Afrikaans-based arts programs, as well as visits and wreath-laying ceremonies with the Women's Memorial and the War Museum at the foot of the statue of President Steyn. Meetings were also held in aid of the poor white community. The student society, however, began to lose support during World War II, as many students thought that its ideology was too influenced by the Oorse Verbrandwag movement, an ideology following that of fascist Nazi Germany. It was replaced by the Afrikaner Student Society in 1943. The influence of Afrikaner nationalism on the campus would further be seen in the establishment of a branch of the Calvinist Student Union, which focused on the development of a purely Calvinist view of life and the world at Afrikaner universities. Not many students, however, would join these movements, however, as they felt that their membership would detract from their support of the Christian Student Society. From 1934 to 1939, the third rector and registrar of the GUC was R.B. Snyman, or better known as Vinkie Snyman. Unlike his predecessors, he would support equal rights for Afrikaans and English at the university, but at the same time, he would also promote that the university should foster a purely Afrikaans spirit. Whereas Maharba promoted Afrikaans and Christian nationalism at the expense of English, Snyman would follow the post-war principle of equal rights. His stance, however, would not be supported in 1938. The SRC would side with Maharba and insist that Christian nationalism be foregrounded at the GUC to strengthen the language and culture of the Afrikaner. During his time, the GUC would also be renamed to the University College of the Orange Free State, or UCOFS, which would become the basis for COFSIs. The period from 1938 onwards proved to be a heady time, not only in South Africa but globally, as World War II is declared and fought, and its outcomes also bring in a number of cultural shifts globally post-war, including that of human rights and feminism. In South Africa, the period from 1938 to 1948 also marks the consolidation of opposition to the principles of conciliation and union between the English and the Afrikaner-speaking communities, the strengthening of the Afrikaner ideal of white supremacy, and the eventual move towards an apartheid state governed by Afrikaner nationalism, Calvinism through the Dutch Reformed Church. The increasing sense of Afrikaner nationalism also plays out on campus. In 1938, a team of students from the university joins the Great Trek Centenary, with these students being the only university team participating. As part of their contribution to the reenactment of the 1838 Great Trek, this cohort of students leaves Bloemfontein with their wagon in 1938, participating in various Great Trek festivals en route to Pretoria. This was where all trek parties from across South Africa would converge for the national celebration and laying of the foundation stone of the Voortrekker Monument. The wagon they use, the Anna Meyer, is later brought back to campus. Maharba and Dr. Nick Diedrichs who are both staff at the university, would also participate in the events in Pretoria, being asked to deliver speeches at the national celebration. Under the various acting rectorships of the Professor Fourie, Band, Ross, Malherbe and Dreyer over the period of 1939 to 1944, and with the continued breakdown in relations between English and Afrikaans speakers, and between those South Africans supporting Britain against Germany, or those opposing this in the Second World War, and with the government under Jan Smuts clamping down on Afrikaner extremist movements like that of the Oose Verband Wag. Afrikaans as the promoted sole language of instruction is removed. In 1944, however, the Dutch Reformed Church, in reaction to this, threatens to withdraw all funding from the university until a policy reinstating Afrikaans is ensured and its continued existence is also ensured. This followed the Senate's continued promotion of bilingualism. Supporting this threat from the church, 2 days later, the SRC breaks away from the university, indicating that they would rather promote that students study at another Afrikaans university than at Koffsies. The council changes its decision on bilingualism, and when H. van der Merwe Scholtz takes over as rector from 1946 to 1958, he works tirelessly with Malherbe and others to make Koffsies an Afrikaans-speaking and practicing university. Van der Merwe Scholtz would further campaign for the cultural interests of the Afrikaner, promoting Christian nationalism as the framework for the delivery of education, as he believed that this would prepare the white Afrikaans youth in particular for the future of the country. Over the period of 1946 to 1949, the geography building, the rates rooms, and the physics and chemistry buildings are also established. With the support of the National Party in power, and with a number of its alumni being part of this government, from 1950 onwards, the university would witness considerable developments in infrastructure and in the promotion of Afrikaner nationalism and the ideals of Christian higher education. On the 18th of March 1950, the UCOFS is promulgated as an Afrikaans-only university by the newly elected apartheid government. The first chancellor of the university from 1950 to 1976 is C.R. Swart, an alumnus who also goes to become the Prime Minister of the apartheid South Africa. In the same period, the H. van der Merwe Scholtz Hall is built as the physical education buildings, which are transformed later into the Skene Theatre and Drama Department. The positioning of the university as an Afrikaans-centered institution and for the development of the Afrikaner nation had, just like the other Afrikaans-focused universities in South Africa, now reached their golden hour. The years of struggle for equal recognition of this nation, its language, and its culture, and for the hardships it had suffered under the British, had seemingly finally paid off. Ironically enough, this was at the time when the rest of the world was struggling with the after effects of nationalism, as had been experienced more recently through Nazi Germany during the Second World War, and with the disastrous impact this has had on humankind.